Welcome everyone. Good evening, everyone. Peter originally had set this up, but he has an illness and can't be here, so you're stuck with me. Very sorry. Thank you for joining and to celebrate the release of Whispers of the Abyss, latest novel by Shannon Francis Smith. Yay! Following her debut YA novel, Champion of the Seasons, Shannon takes a darker turn with this new book, blending Lovecraftian cosmic horror with elements of romance. Whispers of the Abyss follows Abigail, a young woman who inherits a shop from her late uncle and uncovers a terrifying otherworldly secret. It's a journey into the unknown. It explores themes of grief, morality, and self-discovery. Is that a fair assessment? Yeah. Shannon is an author from Barrie, Ontario, who turned her passion for writing into a full-time career during the pandemic. She's a longtime member of the group of the Toronto Sci-Fi and Fantasy Writers Group, yay, who has contributed to many of our anthologies. So tonight, I'm going to ask some questions. We'll dive into Shannon's process, her inspiration behind her new book, and learn about the shift in genre from YA to horror. So let's give another big round of applause for Shannon. And then I'll get started with some questions.
All right.
Yeah. All right, so first, congrats.
Thank you.
It is a huge achievement. Every time feels like the first time, really. So yeah, congratulations on the release of Whispers of the Abyss. Can you give us a quick overview of the book and maybe what inspired you to write it?
Well, as you've said, it is a blend of Lovecraftian horror and with a touch of romance, obviously. The story itself is, of course, rather dark. It takes dark turns because it is horror. And I remember it was like during one of the NaNoWriMos, and I remember thinking, Lovecraftian horror with romance could actually work. I mean, somebody could, like, a great old one could hypothetically seduce someone, or someone could fall in love with them, in theory. So, that's where Whispers of the Abyss was born.
Awesome. I'm in total agreement. That's awesome. Your first book, Champion of the Seasons, was YA fantasy.
Yes.
This is much darker.
Yes.
What inspired that shift to cosmic horror, from fantasy to cosmic horror?
The shift's not as dramatic as you're making it out to be. Champion of the Seasons was originally written about 4 years ago. 4 to 5 years ago. I mean, it was written shortly after the passing of my father. While it was published officially in March of this year, it had been in the back burner for quite a while. And, of course, like, in that time, I changed as a person. We all do, to some degree. By the time it was time to want to write something else, I just wanted to write horror.
Yeah, okay.
And fucked up horror at that. Pardon the French.
Again, I felt that myself personally, that change in genre. I don't know if you guys have ever felt it, can be quite refreshing. You've written in one thing, and just to take that plunge, it can be great and inspiring. So this book touches on themes like grief and trauma.
Yes.
How did you approach these heavy topics while keeping the story engaging? Was that ever a big concern for you?
It can be hard, especially when you're dealing with subject matter that is considered triggering. I mean, you obviously it's there because it's horrifying. Of course, you also don't want to be so grotesque with it, or so flippant with it, that you're making light of it when you're making light of it, right? I mean, this does touch on grief, it touches on trauma, it touches on, it does go into SA, so trigger warning. I mean, I'll need to be upfront. I mean, there's tentacle sex, and there's a hint of a rape, but not at the same time. No tentacle rape. But I mean, all joking aside, just know what you're getting into. That's all I say.
Fair enough. That's good. I think it's I think it's good to address these issues.
Yes.
Writing allows us, it gives us the opportunity to analyze dark traumatic things in a safe space.
Yes.
And I think it's great and it's worthwhile. And I'm glad you did it. Your protagonist, Abigail, she faces an entity of great power. Can you tell us a little bit about her and maybe how you approached her character and her journey?
So, Abigail Morris as the protagonist character, central protagonist. She's this kind of bookish girl who was brought up in small town Nova Scotia. She was orphaned at a young age, and when her parents went off on a trip on a boat and never really came back. And she had been adopted by her uncle, her father's brother, and he raised her up until his own death, which marks the start of the book. And of course, I mean, she's a rather shy individual with unresolved trauma that happened to her as a teenager that does play out in various ways. As she progresses with the story, when she speaks with the entity, Nartalok, she eventually learns that there may have been a family secret on top of everything else that's happening.
So layers going down into the character, which is great. Which is what you need in all characters. So,
yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. As an author, changing genres and experimenting and growing, who are some of your biggest literary influences? Who do you like to read? Do you like to read horror, mystery, romance, or are you wide read, or who inspires you?
Well, I have gotten a lot of inspiration out of, honestly, the works of Lovecraft. I mean, personally not a particularly huge fan of the way they're written, but the actual subject matter that it touches on is rather cool in itself. The mythology surrounding that is really neat. And I do sometimes read and watch horror. I've become very familiar with Elstein's I Have No Mouth and I'm a Scream. Somebody made it into a bad 90s video game at one point. And I'm not kidding. That happened. And and I think I also have a lot of fantasy. I also have a lot of fantasy elements, influences as well. I think going darker didn't really seem that weird because, long-time Legend of Zelda fan, that game genre has a tendency of going into some dark places before going back into Fluffland. So, it doesn't seem that strange to me at the time.
No, that's awesome. I get that with Lovecraft.
Mm-hmm.
He's there are problems with there are concerns with him as an author, but the mythos he set up is fantastic.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He was a secluded bigot who was pretty well afraid of his own shadow. A lot of people figured that might have been why he wrote what he wrote. Though some of the elements that survived into this era, because he wasn't that popular back in the day. He's actually more popular now. It has to do with with things like better understanding, better research and learn it does not actually make you understand something better, which is an affront to our more science-minded society where you can understand it by better studying it. You study the Lovecraft, the great old ones, you're just going to go mad.
Yes.
And it also touches on things like our own insignificance within the universe, because there's all these cosmic entities bigger than us, going about their day, that don't really care that we're there.
Love it. Yeah. Next question. So we've already started to pull back the curtain a little bit on your you as a person.
Yeah.
So maybe a little bit about your process. When you write, do you have any rituals? Do you do you write in the same space? Do you listen to music? Do you like to tweak your atmosphere when you write, or do you just can you write anywhere?
Hypothetically, write anywhere. Mind you, one usually needs to have the means to write.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some of you who were here at the one-shot Antho a couple of weeks back probably knew that I came in with like one of those Remarkables, which is like a digital notepad.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. And that's how I wrote my entry into the Antho this year.
Yeah, okay.
And though I'm usually in front of my desktop computer in my room at home, and that's usually where I do the bulk of my writing and typing. I don't know if I'm really doing rituals so much as, well, I sit, I do my best.
Yeah.
Hope for the best.
Nice.
I mean, I'm fairly good at vomiting words on a page. Some of you may attest to this. I'd like the Sunday sprints and whatnot. Like that's not a concern for me. It's usually after the fact where I have to go back and edit it. It's usually what trips me up.
A reason you're called Shannon the Fast.
Yes.
Right on. Are you working on anything new already? Have you taken some time to sort of sit back, or are you plowing into another story already?
Well, I think I had explained to me that if you're a self-published author, you should be pumping out at least 3 books a year. Only got 2 out sadly this year. But all that joking aside, I am working on like a sequel to Champion of Seasons. I've had 2 false starts though, so it's been a slow process.
Yeah.
I'm also working on what will be a series of short stories that are just going to examine this tribe of desert people that are effectively Legend of Zelda Garuda, like all women except for one dude.
Wow. That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
I'm going to open it up now. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for Shannon about her as a writer or the book specifically?
I do.
Take it away.
If you had to put a list of trigger warnings together for your book, what would they be?
Alright, a list. Okay. So, I think to the best of my understanding of what is a tournament trigger, it does talk about rape and sexual assault. There is tentacle sex. no nice way to put it. There is gore in it. There are people being cut up. There are people being ripped open. There's a graphic depiction of murder in it. I think that covers all the trigger warnings.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, no, I mean, like you mentioned, you're trying to put out like multiple books a year to kind of fuel your like self-publishing career. Like, how does that? Do you find that moving forward, like you want to like stick with like specific genre, or like do you have any plans like converting fans of like your YA series to this one, or like what are your thoughts about that?
I think at the moment I'm trying to see what's going to stick.
You're trying to like figure out what works for you.
I mean, even if I decide to write the YA and the horror and other stuff, I accept that there will be people who will be fans of the YA, but they won't be fans of this. So there are people who they really love Champion Seasons, they're not going to like this, and vice versa. Okay, so that's just the way it is. Everyone has their own tastes. But I mean, at the present moment, I checked my KDP statistics, and apparently I have sold more of Whispers of the Abyss than I have of Champion Seasons so far.
That could be genre. That could be the novella versus a full book.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Which do you like to write better? Which do you like?
Admittingly, it is more cathartic to write stuff that is very gory and adult, right? Stuff that is just like it is cathartic and maybe easier in a way to write gross stuff and to write sex and whatnot. Though YA has its own fun to it as well, because I mean you don't have to be as serious with it as you would if work that's more but meant to be more adult.
Michelle, did you have a question?
Are you ready?
So, what was the hardest part of this book to write for you? Like, was there a particular aspect of it or a particular scene that was the most difficult?
I think for me it was like the minutia of the story. Like my feedback from the editor was you did not write enough about her day-to-day life, and you did not write enough about the setting of where she is at any given moment. So I had to like go back and write out things like how she got to work, what happened at her work as a librarian, and when she started helping the great old one, she also did some traveling. Had to describe the places she went, what she ate, what she saw, who she interacted with, if she engaged in the nightlife or the day life, anything. And I found incredibly difficult to do.
Those are things that aren't immediately connected to the plot, right? So you kind of wonder, why am I putting them there if they're not connected to the plot?
And considering that, let's see, there's like I had to interlace a rape scene in parts of the book, which is difficult subject matter to handle because 1, scary, 2, you don't want to make light of it because it's a serious matter, and 3, you want to be shocking, but you don't want it to be gratuitous. And of course, one problem people run into with writing rape scenes is that they forget that it's an act of violence, so you ended up writing it for gratification purposes, which, for what I'm doing, isn't what I want to do.
I think that's a little bit of a segue. I wanted to ask, like, what's a feedback that you took and it helped you, and do you have any feedback that you decided not to incorporate?
Like with any feedback, it's very hard to know what is a good advice and what is just one person being weird or having issues with taste. I did have a couple of men read this in the group before I sent it to the editor, and they had things to say. I think a couple of it was like, I need a puke bucket, but yeah, there was like a chapter I ripped out because it was nothing but exposition. For example, I did also like describe a few more things as well, or cut out a couple other things because a lot of people felt that it wasn't really needed information or it just bugged on the narrative.
Is this intended as a standalone, or are you going to continue with this story maybe?
This could be read as a standalone. I am floating the idea of a sequel that's following a homicide detective from Toronto who's tasked with solving a certain murder that does happen in the book.
Oh, neat.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a cool time.
So, I was wondering what made you choose to mix these two genres that are generally considered separate, which is like the Lovecraftian horror thriller along with romance. Although, like, I don't want to say that it's not popular because it is an increasingly popular thing, but it's still considered a little bit different,
weird,
right? So,
yeah.
what drew you to mix those two genres together?
I don't know. I mean, I just thought that, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe I've watched too much hentai. I don't know. Because I mean, there's a lot of very nudily sex things, in certain types of porn. And I've always been one of those people like likes to have like love scenes and that intermingled with an actual story, not just be straight up porn. And of course, the more I thought about it, and more of looking into like, because I've always been more into the fantasy stuff, and science fiction and whatnot, and I realized, hypothetically, you may joke about like the romantic encounter with Cthulhu, but such doesn't sound like a bad idea. There would be an audience for that.
There is. Absolutely there is.
Yeah. Going back to think back on the day when you start writing a novel and when you don't even come up with outline anything, you just start from like the very, very, very beginning, going back. If you tell that Shannon, attach Shannon a piece of advice that you got after you finished the novel, what would it be?
Advice to your younger self, yeah.
The approach from yourself would be, okay, Shannon, I mean, one piece of advice would be, Shannon, maybe you should think of dropping out of university. You're not going to make that much money with your CS major. I've foreseen the future. It doesn't end well for you. Though, more seriously, I think I would just tell my past self, just do it.
That's really
Just fucking do it.
Embrace it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's any good. No, just do it.
Probably the same. Yeah.
And I have a feeling if I gave her that advice, maybe I would actually have made a video game as opposed to decided to be a writer. Because I would have just went and tried it. I actually would have went and did it. Even though it would have taken me a while. But hey, I'm not one that likes to go into the what ifs because, oh gee, that's too bad. We are where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only direction you can go is forward.
Yes.
Any other questions? Right on. Did you want to do a bit of a reading?
Sure.
Yeah? Yeah. We're going to do a little bit of a reading.
Alright.
We've got a section planned in.
Yes, I do. I actually went to this one friend of the family who was half probably through this book, and I asked her if there was any scenes that stood out while reading, and she gave me a couple of suggestions. I think this is this one that best summarizes the hypothetical tango that Abigail and the entity Nartalok are interwoven in. So,
Can everyone hear okay?
Nope.
Can speak a little louder.
okay, so context is our uncle's been dead for about 3 to 4 months, and of course she had a particularly bad day where she went home to an empty house and just couldn't stand it. So she went to the local public house, and got completely wankered. And I think the bar owner's wife takes her home. So here she is just waking up from her foyer, where she passed out. She awoke to, "Why are you sleeping there? You don't usually sleep there," from the book. "Just that tired," she slurred. "What's wrong with your voice? You've always spoken in a clear, metallic May." Abigail moaned. "Okay, I had a few too many." "Of what?" "Of drinks." "How would drinking make you like this?" Abigail's mind halted as faint pins and needles crawled all over her. With lips she could not feel, she said, I think Finley's right. What am I doing? Drinking too much?" She shook as she struggled to her feet. "Bed. I need to go to bed," she said to herself from more than anyone. "Too much of what?" Nartalok pressed. "Booze," Abigail replied in a rushed tone. "Alcohol." "Oh, so a specific liquid, then, that has this effect on your biology?" "Whatever." She took awkward steps through the house, down the hallway towards her bedroom. She almost fell again, except some firm yet jelly-like gripped her around her chest and shoulders. Whatever it was held her until she got onto her bed and passed out. A brief moment where she felt no grief as unnatural sleep welcomed her. She felt numb. The next day she phoned in sick at the library and a pounding headache came on following a wave of lethargy. "Sick?" Prudence tisked. "Sick. Got it, Abigail. You're sick. Indeed. Show up tomorrow." She slumped back into the bed. How could I forget everyone is watching? Abigail thought to herself. Oh God, I wish I was dead. With nothing more she could do, she resumed her rest. As the alcohol wore off, the sleep became more real, and her mind started ruminating over a very basic question. Why talk to the book at all? Indeed, why? Did she want the house to be haunted? Or was she having a psychotic break? One where she invented an imaginary friend that lurks in the house. An alien birthed from her imagination. Someone she knew wouldn't take anything she said and weaponized it against her in a small community. Someone acting as a proxy for Edward, even if all it was doing was buttering her up to free him from a prison held by the book. Of course, why this mythos at all? Does she love books so much that she wanted to talk to him? Further, why a tome likely worth a lot of money? She got up once she had the energy to do so. Under order of a growling stomach, she walked down in the hall and into the kitchen to fix herself some bacon and eggs. As she layered the meat onto the pan, Nartaluk spoke. Are you feeling better? She jumped at first, feeling her heart thump to the top of her chest. Then she remembered the book and her new roommate. A little. She replied as she watched the greasy food spit along the hot pan. What more needs to be done? Abigail paused. She blinked while piercing together a response. Huh? What do you mean? Was all she could get out. You are only a little better. How can I make you fully better? Nothing you could do, Abigail replied as she cracked eggs, pouring them out one at a time into the pan with the bacon. Maybe, maybe not, she of Starlight. What would make you feel better? Tell me, for maybe I can do that. Right. Didn't take long before breakfast or dinner was splotted on a plate. She took a seat to eat, her face long as she took no delight in her meal. Well? Angela pressed. Abigail, what do you need? She dropped her fork. As it clanged onto the plate, she barely reacted. I don't know. She whined. So much is happening all at once. I don't know what to do. I don't want to think about it. I wish it would end. What to end? Everything. All of it. Just everything. Are you sure? Please. I can't stand it anymore. I fucked it. I know it. I just wish to be numb. I can't do this. Nartaluk replied as a nudity like appendage slipped along her soldier. 'Tis numb, worse than pain.
Thanks for reading and for answering my questions and
Okay.
having a little chat. We're going to move on now. If people would like a signed copy, there are paperbacks, there are hardcovers, and we're all set up. So
Yep.
we're going to move
I
on.
have
So
one final question.
yeah.
Shanna, I remember for your last book you did an audiobook on Audible.
Yes.
So did you do the same for this book or no?
I plan to.
You plan to? Or?
It's not out yet. I will record something and upload it as soon as I can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Perfect. Right on. And thanks everyone for coming and listening and hanging out. That's it.
Thank you. I got the ebook already.
Nice.
Can she send your phone? Is that what
You could get the PDF version and then we can sign off.
Exactly.
Yes.
Print it off, yeah. Yeah, so for this event, like only this weekend, you can get a free ebook download onto Kindle from Kindle of Whispers of the Abyss.
I already bought my copies.
Of course, there's also physical copies here. Paperback is $13. Hardcover's $30. You can also buy this complimentary poster. It's $10 each, or $5 with a hardcover.
Nice.
And bookmarks are free. Just come and grab it.
Books and merch. We all love that.
Yep.
Yeah, terrific.
It is a nice cover. I paid way too much money for the cover. It better be good.
Really nice.
I always, yeah. It's worth it. It's always worth it.
Yeah.